My name is Alan Williams. Some of you may have seen some previous videos of mine. I've been producing business objects video tutorials for the last 5 years. This is my very first Tableau video. I'm going to be focusing on Tableau 10, and this will be the first in a series of videos that I'm going to produce. I have Tableau 10 opened, and as you can see, I'm running version 10.0. Before I go any further, I should talk a little bit about Tableau Software for those of you who aren't familiar. So Tableau is data visualization software. And with Tableau, you can create interactive dashboards that tell a story about your data. I think that's the best way I can describe it. There's much more to it than that, but in a nutshell, that's what Tableau is. I'd like to talk a little bit about the different versions of Tableau. So with Tableau, there's Tableau Desktop. That's what I'm using to create these videos. And there's two different versions of Tableau Desktop. One is the Personal Edition, and one is the Professional Edition. So the difference between these two is the fact that with the Professional Edition, you can connect to virtually any data source. With the Personal Edition, you're limited to 7 data sources, including Excel and CSV. And new in version 10, with the Personal Edition, you can connect to Google Sheets. In addition to Tableau Desktop, there's also Tableau Server and Tableau Online. These are two server-based applications. So Tableau Server, if you want to host Tableau in-house, not on the cloud, typically behind a firewall. If your company is set up that way, you purchase Tableau Server. This allows users within your organization to consume dashboards, Tableau workbooks that have been published by users that have Tableau Desktop installed. Tableau Online, very similar to Tableau Server. The difference is this is a cloud-based solution. There's also Tableau Public, and Tableau Public is free to anyone. The limitation with Tableau Public, when you publish a file with Tableau, a workbook or a dashboard, it gets posted to the Tableau Public site. You don't have the ability to save files on your local machine with Tableau Public. But again, it's free, and if you're new to Tableau and want to try it out, I would recommend it. That's how I started with the software, is by trying out Tableau Public a little over a year ago. And speaking of Tableau Public, if you go to public.tableau.com, this is the website for Tableau Public, and if you go to the Gallery tab here, you'll get a very good idea for the types of visualizations that can be created with Tableau. You can even download these and work with them yourself. Everything that gets published to Tableau Public is available for anyone that wants to use it or enhance it or to view how it was created. So very, very good resource if you're new to Tableau, and it really gives you a good idea in terms of what the software is capable of. Very, very powerful. I want to talk a little bit about the data we're going to be using for my video tutorials. And one of the great new features of Tableau 10 is you can import data from many different sources and have cross-database joins defined. And for those of you familiar with business objects, which I've created a number of videos on, you'll know that this is very similar to what you can do with a multi-source universe, but it's a very powerful feature. So in our example, we're going to have data from an Excel spreadsheet. We're going to have data from a CSV file and from a Google Sheets file. This could very easily be a SQL Server database, an Oracle database, and a Sybase database server. But in our case, we're going to use Excel, CSV, and Google Sheets. And specifically, we're going to be using the AdventureWorks databases published by Microsoft. So they have an AdventureWorks data warehouse database. It's a very good database for tutorial purposes. It uses a dimensional model with fact tables and dimension tables, and I find it really useful, and it's got a good set of data. Just to illustrate, I'll open up my query tool here. So we have a number of years worth of data. I'm just going to run this query. This will be the main data source for our tutorials. We'll just see how many rows we get. So this query has returned just under 61,000 rows. We have a lot of information here: sales information, order quantities, product names, categories, and so forth. So very useful information and good information to have to work with Tableau. Okay, now let's get started. I have Tableau 10 opened. Since I started making this video last week, I upgraded to version 10.0.1. So in this tutorial, we're going to use 3 data sources. I want to talk a little bit more about those right now. So if I go to Google Drive, I'm going to make these data sources available to anyone who wants to download them if you want to try to do what I'm doing in this video. So I have an employees Google Sheet. This is going to be one of the data sources, so this is Google Spreadsheet. So this is the employees records from the AdventureWorks database. Another data source, is Excel. We have an Excel, this reseller sales. So this has, let's see here, over 60,000 rows of sales data. So we have Google Sheets, Excel, and the other one is a CSV file. So this is a very small file, product line code, product line description, and we're going to be joining this to the reseller sales Excel spreadsheet. Let's go back into Tableau now and connect to these data sources. So to do that in Tableau, we are only going to be connecting to Excel, Google Sheets, and a CSV file. If you have the professional edition of the desktop version of Tableau, you can connect to database servers. There are lots of them available. But for the purpose of this demo, we're just going to use Excel, Google Sheets, and a text file. So first I'm going to connect to Excel. I'm going to select that particular file that we're looking for. And it's the reseller sales spreadsheet, so I'll click open. So Tableau is opening the spreadsheet here, and it's loading the data. So I'd pause the video for a few seconds while Tableau loaded the data, so we can see all of the fields that were in that spreadsheet have now been added to Tableau. And what's interesting is that it's changed the names here a little bit. So in the Excel spreadsheet, order quantity didn't have a space, but Tableau is able to pick up that should probably be a space in between there. Same with unit and price, extended amount, and so forth. So we've got Excel. So this is what's new to version 10. Now I can add another connection here. This wasn't available in Tableau before version 10. This time I'm going to connect to a text file, and this will be the CSV file. And that is the product lines file. Okay, if I had fields with the same name in the 2 data sources, Tableau would have tried to automatically detect where the join should be. So in this case, I do want an inner join, and from the reseller sales, I want to use the product line field, and from the product line CSV file, I've got the field name product line code. So now it's creating that join, and we have 2 data sources joined here. Now that we've got an Excel spreadsheet and we have a CSV file, the next thing I want to do is add a Google Sheet here. So I'm going to go down to add a connection, Google Sheets, and this is where I've just logged into my Google account a few minutes ago, otherwise it would have been prompting me to enter my credentials. So every time that you do this, it's going to ask you to grant Tableau permissions to the files in your Google Drive. In this case, I want the employees Google Sheet, and I will say connect. So now we've added the employees data source, and unlike the product lines, it's automatically created the join. And the reason is because there is a field name called employee key in both of these data sources. So we're pretty much ready now to get started with working on our Tableau worksheets. We have a data source from Excel, Google Sheets, and a CSV file. One thing I didn't mention earlier about working with Excel data sources, it's much easier, it's better practice to have your data formatted just like it would be in a database with no header information other than the column rows, fields that are formatted properly and so forth. So you only want to have numbers in a column that should have numbers and so forth. If your spreadsheet isn't formatted like this, Tableau will try to determine where the data is. It's a little bit more work on your part to figure out if Tableau has selected the right piece of data, for example, in your spreadsheet. So I would recommend cleaning your data before you bring it into Tableau. Before we create a new worksheet, I want to point out a few more items on this screen here. So you can sort the fields in the bottom of the screen by data source order, which is default, A to Z ascending, A to Z ascending or descending per table. In this case, we have 3 tables in this data source, so I'll just make it A to Z. So it's going to change the order here now. I can also change the column header for these items. So if I wanted color to be something else or customer PO number, let's say for example, I just want this to be PO number. I can just delete that. And whatever I change this to, it's not changing the underlying data source. It's changing that field in Tableau. So when I'm working with purchase order number in worksheets, I'm going to see PO number instead of purchase order number. There's a few more items I want to change as well. This employee country. I'm going to change this to have a space in between it. So this was from the Google Sheets. So I suppose the behavior of Tableau determining where a space should be in a field might not be working quite yet for Google Sheets. I'm not sure why employee country had a space and didn't capitalize the Z. I'm going to pause the video and change a few other column headers. I changed employee territory, employee region to have a space and a capital R, capital T here. I also changed English product name to product name, English product subcategory name to subcategory name. In here I can also hide. So for example, I don't need to see the employee key when I'm working on worksheets, so I can click here, this arrow, and say hide. So now that won't be available to people working on worksheets. They don't need to see the employee key anyways. Let's have a look at the connection information. By default, the connection type is live. And what this means is every time you access data in a Tableau workbook, it's going to refresh data against the live data source. If I hover over one of these items, in this case, Tableau recognizes that I'm using multiple connections, and it's suggesting to me that I use an extract. So if I click on extract, what it's going to do is it's going to extract all the data from these 3 sources, save it as a TDE file, and it'll make the performance much better when I'm working with the data in the worksheets. It'll also allow me to create a TWBX file, which is a Tableau worksheet and data extract combined, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to say extract. So it's going to extract all the data from the 3 data sources. As you can see, it's loading the data right now. I'm going to pause until this finishes. So the extract finished. If I go to create a new worksheet, it's asking me where to save the Tableau data extract file. So I'm just going to call this reseller sales demo, and click on save. Now it's saving all the data into one file. I'll pause it until that finishes. Actually, it's creating the extract database. I should show you that. It's going to tell you how long it takes. Sometimes it'll give you a message saying it's loading the data for the first time. It may take a few minutes, and this again depends on the data source. Also depends on the amount of data. So it's doing this for all 3 data sources that I have in this Tableau file. Okay, so now I have all of the data from those 3 data sources. And in this case, I do want at this point to save this Tableau file. I want to save as not just a Tableau workbook, because Tableau workbook just has information about the worksheets and dashboards. It doesn't save the data with it. I want to create a packaged workbook, and I'm going to call this reseller sales demo. And click on save. So now the next time I open this file, I don't have to worry about connecting to the data sources. All of the data is self-contained in this file. In my experience, I don't always extract the data that I want perfectly the first time. Quite often I'll start working on a worksheet and figure out that I'll need more fields, or I'll need to filter the data, or I'll need to do something in addition to what I've done. And that's common. So you can very easily change the data source. By clicking on data source at the bottom, it brings me back to this first screen we're working with. So for this example, let's say that I want to filter the data at the data source level. I want to have filter on, let's see, a subcategory name. I want to exclude certain subcategories at the data source level. So if I go into filters and click on add, I want to add a data source filter, and I said subcategory, right? So product, subcategory name, okay. Just taking a minute to think here. It's getting the data ready for me to determine how I want to filter this data. I'll pause while this is working. And for the purposes of this demo, I can select all of these items from the list that I want to include, or I can exclude a certain value. So we're going to say that we do not want to have crank sets, any products that belong to the subcategory named crank sets included in the data source. And so anyone working with the workbooks in this Tableau file will not see any of these products. So this allows you the ability to filter data at the data source level without going back to change the initial queries that you've run. So I'm going to say OK, and OK. So now it's filtered the data at the data source level. I'm going to go back into my worksheet. If I try and bring in data for that subcategory name, it's not going to bring it in. One last thing I wanted to mention before wrapping up this introductory video. When I'm in worksheet mode, I'm working on sheet 1 down at the bottom. On the left hand side, we see the data tab, and it's broken down the objects that are available, the data that's available by dimensions up here, and measures at the bottom. It's also grouped the objects, the data objects, by the data sources. We had employees, which is Google Sheet, product lines, which is a CSV file, and the sales, which is a spreadsheet. By default, when Tableau brings in data, it attempts to determine whether it's a dimension or a measure. Anything with a number by default is a measure. In this case, days to manufacture. I don't want this to be a measure. I want this to be a dimension. So I right click and I say convert to dimension. And you do the same thing for reorder point. Change, convert to dimension, safety stock level. I'm going to pause the video while I change some of these other ones. So I've gone through and I've moved some of these other items that were initially listed as measures to dimensions. Now I have items that I actually want to measure here as measures. At this point, we've selected our 3 data sources we want to use for this Tableau workbook so that we can create some worksheets and then some dashboards further down the road. We've filtered the data at the data source level on one of the product subcategories, and we've changed some of the default measures into dimensions. So at this point, we're ready to go. The next video we'll start working with this data. I hope you found this video useful. Again, my name is Alan Williams, and this will be the first in a series of Tableau video tutorials that I'll be producing. Thanks for watching.